Let's talk about healing that inner child while we build some Legos. Let's go. I want to start off by explaining the importance of your inner child in your healing journey with an analogy. So, imagine your inner child is the part of you that remembers everything you felt and experienced when you were a little kid, like really little. Things that happened that made you happy, sometimes sad. These memories and feelings stay with you as you grow up. Sometimes the stuff from your past can affect how you feel and act as a grown-up. For example, if something made you feel scared or not good enough when you were little, those feelings might show up in your life now. It's like carrying around a backpack full of old emotions that can pop up in different situations. Focusing on your inner child is like taking time to open that backpack and see what's inside. And trust me, there's a lot inside. But by doing this, you can understand why you might feel certain ways in certain situations. It's like talking to your younger self and giving them comfort and understanding. This can help you feel better about yourself and make your relationships with others go a little bit more smoothly. So I'm going to break down what inner child healing looks like into 7 different steps. So step number 1 would be self-awareness and reflection. Now, this one sounds a little obvious, but it's the one that most people miss. Recognizing the impact of your childhood and how those experiences shape your adult reactions is game-changing. For example, growing up in a strict household with a lot of rules can make you feel anxious about breaking rules, even as an adult. So we need to identify how those triggers in your present connect back to events in your past. Engage in a deep reflection on moments that shaped your emotions and belief during childhood. One way to do this that I personally take is journaling as a tool to explore the memories and dive into their emotional impact. You can write about the memories of moving frequently as a child and the challenges it posed, for example. That leads us into step number 2, validation of these emotions. Whenever you journal or meditate, however you choose to reflect, embracing and fully accepting the emotions that come up from past wounds is the first way to start diving deeper. You have to recognize that your emotions serve as signals and they're not a sign of weakness. It's hard to not be critical in the situation, but you have to build up a habit of this understanding. And also grant yourself the permission to grieve that pain that you've carried from your past experiences. Sometimes we dull ourselves out and numb the pain, and other times it's a soft spot that can really come up in triggers. But it's important to cultivate a space that is safe, like the one I've created for myself, where you can openly express your emotions and process them. It might even be smart to make this space a support group, or just a specific friend that you can confide in that might be able to relate or mirror some of your experiences. Now let's move on into step 3. That's identifying our core beliefs. Our core beliefs are things that run very subconscious. They're very much background-like. So we have to acknowledge the reoccurrence of the negative thought patterns in our life. For example, notice how doubting your abilities is often tied to an ingrained belief that you're inadequate. Something someone said 10 years ago can still affect you today. So we have to trace these patterns back to their origins and your early life experiences. That's why I suggest journaling, because it's a little easier to keep track of things instead of expecting your brain to do all that for you. I mean, come on now. We see how the brain holds our information so far. But understand the tangible impact these beliefs have on your daily choices and overall well-being. And you have to challenge them. Challenge all of your limiting beliefs with concrete evidence of what contradicts them. Let's say growing up you feel inadequate because someone said that you're not smart, or maybe a parent or a close friend criticized you in some way that made you feel dumb. You can replace this self-defeating belief of "I'm not smart enough" with instances where you have demonstrated competence. And I'm sure you can find a lot of them. Talk to friends, reflect on your own wins. One thing I do in my journaling is I write my 3 wins of the day. So in moments where I do feel inadequate, I can simply flip open my journal and look back on moments where I have won. And you have wins every single day. You might just not acknowledge them. Which leads us into step 4, which is compassion and forgiveness. Having compassion for yourself is one of the most important of these steps. You get to cultivate an understanding that your inner child coped with the tools they had at the time. The tools and lessons and knowledge you have now, you probably didn't have as a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15-year-old. So it's important to give yourself grace when it comes to healing and understanding what you went through at the time. But distinguish between your actions and your inherent self-worth. Forgive actions whilst nurturing that self-compassion. For example, forgive your younger self for lying to fit in. We can pretend to be people as a kind of a survival strategy. And you have to understand that there's a lot of social pressures that we face growing up. And as a child, we're not equipped with the tools in order to understand and process those things. So we just do what we know best. Now, you have to extend yourself the same compassion and kindness you would offer to a friend. Maybe in that moment where you're talking to a friend or support group, pay attention to how you talk to them, how you're empathetic, how you're understanding and not critical of what they went through. It's the same way you should be treating yourself. We're not our own enemies. We should be our best friends. And I hope that you wouldn't treat your best friend with criticalness and judgment. So I want you to envision meeting your younger self and conveying forgiveness and acceptance. Imagine embracing your younger self and just assuring them that they do deserve love and understanding. Because you do. We all do. And, some people might think that you had to have a really traumatic childhood in order for this knowledge to be relevant, but you can have a quote-unquote picture-perfect childhood and still have things in your child to heal. That's why it's really important to understand the 5th step, which is reparenting and nurturing. So visualize becoming the nurturing parent that you needed during those important years. Picture yourself providing comfort and reassurance to your younger self, to give yourself those things that you wanted so badly as a child, whether that be physical things like a Lego set, or just having someone to hear you out and listen to your emotions. It's also important to engage in activities that bring you genuine joy and comfort. We all had our ways of coping as we grew up and passions growing up, such as art or reading, and it's really important to reconnect with your inner child. Take up an old hobby, start painting again, start reading your favorite book series. There's so many ways that you can tap back into that inner child. We can revisit these things in a more mature, refreshing way that resonates more with yourself. So instead of flipping through picture books, maybe now we can read self-help books. Everything's very subjective and personal, so I'll leave that to you on figuring out exactly what would work best for you in that situation. Now, we have to prioritize regular inner child time in our routine. So this isn't the sort of thing you just do right after this video and leave it at that. You need to make a regular routine out of giving yourself that attention. Take a bubble bath every Wednesday night, or go to the park and finger paint every Friday. Or even a daily habit, such as spending time reading, or like I said, doing art. I'm just using the examples that apply to me. But think about how those apply to yourself, and come up with a routine that benefits not just you, but the child you. So, step 6, we have positive affirmations and our inner dialogue. I've mentioned a few times before that we can get really critical when healing our inner child. It can be a really uncomfortable subject to think about and dive into. But keep in mind how you would treat your best friend or how you would treat your grandmother. It would be with empathy and encouragement. So in those moments of criticalness, I just suggest that you kind of look outside of the box and think of different ways to talk to yourself. And at some point, you'll start to identify reoccurring instances of self-talk, specifically negative ones. So limiting speech and belief would be something like, The "I can't do this" stems from a belief rooted in past failure. Our past is just a guide. It's something we can never change. It's something that does define us to some extent, but it doesn't have to define us fully as people. It defines us in the sense that this is what we went through and we can't change that, and it has shaped us in other ways. And you can either be, to use an analogy, let's take an alcoholic father with 2 kids. You can be the kid that takes that circumstance and uses it to be a victim of, oh, well, I had an alcoholic father, so I couldn't do these things. Or you can use your lessons and your past as empowerment as, yeah, like, this is what I went through, and I never want my children or people my age to go through those sort of things. So I'm becoming the person that can break that negative cycle. It's all about perspective and that inner dialogue. So you can develop a collection of positive affirmations that counteract those negative thoughts. Now, I heard this idea, which I haven't tried yet, and I'm willing to give it a shot, where you record yourself saying positive affirmations. I personally hate the sound of my own voice on recordings, which is one of my biggest struggles in recording these videos. But the science behind it is we listen to our own voice, like it clicks more than other people's voices. So if you just spend time making one video saying like, I am powerful, I deserve love, etc., in your own voice, your brain just kind of processes it a lot easier. But if you're not comfortable with that, of course, it's still powerful to listen to other people's affirmations in a video or a podcast, or even just reading them in your head. But it should be a daily practice of affirmations to reshape your mindset and outlook. It's not going to happen overnight, and think about how many years it took for your brain to get to this point. It's going to take a long time to rewire it into the way that you want, in the more mature adult way. So you have to employ a nurturing and encouraging inner dialogue. For example, offer yourself reassurance and comforting words. It could also help to refer back to that friend or that support group to give you the example of what that would look like. Sometimes it's hard to practice empathy with ourselves, and we do need an example to change that behavior. There's nothing wrong with reaching out for help, or even taking to Google just to figure out something that should be quote-unquote common sense. But how does all of this come together and impact us? Why would we go through doing all of this work for months and years? And that leads me into step 7, which is our final step. I like to call it integration for growth. So understand that the healing process is an ongoing journey rather than a finite destination. You have to honor and celebrate your progress, which is why, again, I suggest bullet journaling or journaling of some kind to keep track of your feelings and your wins. That way you can physically look back on things and appreciate what you have done. But once you apply all of the insights and practices you've acquired from the earlier steps in your everyday life, you can utilize that self-compassion and positive affirmation to kind of maintain stress. Stress is like it requires equilibrium, so it's a pendulum of some sort, I guess. I don't know what analogy I'm trying to use here. But during emotional stress, that pendulum will swing from side to side, and our inner child plays a huge part in which direction that goes in. So practicing all of these self-soothing and self-supporting actions will over time add up to make that pendulum swing in a better direction, hopefully more balanced. And observe how your journey positively influences your relationships. I think people really underestimate how much your inner child plays into your relationships, specifically romantic ones, because the ways that we argue, the ways that we talk to our partner, the ways we expect to be loved, it all comes from childhood. We are little computers that run off of the script and programs that we got handed growing up. So one thing that I learned recently, I went to get a brain scan done, And as I was talking to this doctor about childhood trauma and current trauma, I was speaking on relationships and how that's trauma that is charged. It impacts my daily life. And he gave me some amazing advice, because I was like, yeah, like I saw a lot of bad examples of how I didn't want to be loved growing up as a child. And I know that those are wrong, but for some reason, I still am attracted to that sort of thing. And he asked me, well, what about good examples? Did you ever have a father figure showing your mother how love should look like? And I was like, no, I didn't have many good examples. And he looked at me and snapped and was like, well, there's your answer right there. Your brain has two voids. You have the side that knows what love should look like and what it shouldn't look like. So whatever information you get as a child is going to fill up those two voids. Now, even if you're working with limited information like I did, where you mostly have bad examples, your brain is still going to fill up both voids with that information. So because I only had, or mostly bad examples, the way that I feel love and the way that I don't see love is almost the same thing. So that's impacted every single one of my relationships and every single one of my partners and your partners and your partner's partners and your parents' partners. Everyone is impacted by these examples and information we got as children. It runs us like the script behind a computer program. And take that as you will. I see this as a positive thing, because the same way that you can re-script a computer program to run more efficiently is the same way you can re-script yourself to run more efficiently. So again, give yourself grace, give yourself the space that is full of compassion and understanding, and most importantly, time. And just re-script yourself, re-script into who you want to be. You are never ever locked into who you are now, who you were before. We are currently evolving every single day, and whether you decide to take this journey today or a year from now, it's always a good moment, and you can always make the change. It might be hard, and that backpack might have a lot of crap in it, but once you start taking things out one by one, it gets easier, it gets lighter, and at some point you won't even need the backpack because there's not going to be anything in it. So I hope we all get to that point. I hope we take off our backpacks and we get to just roam freely and embrace our inner child and integrate it into our present self, because life is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be filled with joy, just like things were as a child. Our curiosity and sense of pleasure is much different than it was 10, 20, even 30 years ago. So let's try to revisit those feelings and experiences and bring them back into the present in a more refreshing, mature way. And that's what inner child healing looks like. So you saw me, for example, heal my inner child by building this Lego set. And although it seems like a small thing, the damage it reverses is amazing, especially if you make a habit of it. So no, I'm not going to go build a Lego set every day, but I am going to do art every day. I'm going to read every day. I'm going to occasionally build a Lego set on a Wednesday, or go finger paint in the park on a Saturday. Whatever that looks like to you, just do it. Make it a part of your system, your routine, and see where that helps you in your healing journey. There's no set time to get to the end, because there is no such thing as an end when it comes to healing. There's always more work to be done, and it's important to be grateful and proud of where you've gone, where you came from, and where you are now. If you made it to the end of this video, I thank you very much, and I hope you thank yourself and give yourself a pat on the back for taking some action, taking some time to learn about the inner child and its importance on your healing journey. It might look something like this, or it might look like finger painting in the park on a Saturday afternoon. I don't know what it looks like to you, but give yourself time, give yourself space, give yourself grace to understand and process and re-script all of the things that make you who you are today. It's never too late to make a change, and so I encourage you to go to Target and buy a Lego set and make that change right now. Have a good one. I'm going to show you guys how to turn this into this. So let's get the semantics out of the way.